Democracy is a rare and fragile gift from our ancestors. It lives not in our laws, not in our customs, but in ourselves. At its core is the axiom that all people have a voice in our society. It is nourished by the respect we show each other, by listening even to the quietest voice, and by adding our voice as well. It flourishes in empathy and in valuing the public good ahead of our own. I asked some of my friends to answer the question, what is democracy? Here are their answers.
Our democracy is challenged, yesterday and today. Without good education and good health care, democracy is an illusion. A democracy supports a robust free press that allows the citizens to be informed. A robust civic education would be part of a strong democratic state. And the citizen would vote in a larger percentage. A democratic state would have elections on a non-working day, and the polls would be open for more hours. It would have more political parties representing different constituents of the nation. A democracy would not allow big money interests to dominate. A democracy would encourage debates. A democracy would uphold human rights and other basic rights, like religious, to believe
in general,
and
I'd
not to
say
believe.
it's a system of government where the governed elects a body or bodies or people in order to represent them, and this is done through hopefully fair elections, and the people have the final say. Laws are passed by whatever the representatives are, or whoever's been elected, but that the laws have to apply to everybody and they have to be faithfully executed. People have to be held to the law equally, not one person having an advantage over another. While the majority may govern, the general rights of minorities have to be
also
protected.
like to think of it as a tool to make sure no one else is above me, based on constraint and mistrust, while at the same time solidarity through identity. So to enable my choice as much as possible, there has to be no tyranny. But tyranny of aristocrats, and now it's the 1%, but also tyranny of the majority, tyranny of the culture. Each individual's full freedom, which is also each community's full freedom, and they intermix. So there's a balance there. There's never complete freedom, and you can't have complete democracy. You can't have the entire will of everyone all the time.
I've taught history for half my teaching career, and the simple definition is people rule. I could stop there and just be at ease with it. Our democracy was based, I think, largely on Greek, particularly Athens, which was not really a democracy. I mean, as far as the idea that all the people rule is ridiculous. They had slaves, and what it meant is the people with power already. The people with power ruled is what it meant. Ours was first based on that or something along those lines. Anyway, the classic idea of democracy, and so ours was as well. The people with power rule.
I've got a very short answer, and it's democracy is a system where everyone has a voice. Now, doesn't always work, doesn't always happen, But I think in the shortest explanation of democracy is where everyone has a voice, everyone participates. Price of democracy is participation. Certainly, voting is it should be an obligation that everyone should take seriously. Um, I think it ought to be maybe almost mandatory. It's the price you pay for this system of government is your participation. The least you can do is vote, and then you can go much further and you can get involved in politics, running for office. And it's not just an invitation. It seems like it's an invitation to participate, I guess it is, but it doesn't need to be voluntary. I think we'd have a better system if you were pretty much required to vote, or to pay taxes, and maybe that's a good time to send in your vote when you send in a check.
Well, democracy to me is a system of self-government in which citizens have a free and equal vote, where no voice is louder than any other due to money or power or weighted geographical boundaries, and where laws and decisions are made to promote the common good based on the majority, but always with a respect and a concern for the minority and a willingness to compromise to create a society where all have freedom and opportunity to grow.
Well, I would define democracy with two words: equity and respect. Some might say they are merely necessary conditions, but I'd argue that as such, they constitute a definition. Equity and respect must be present and operative in order for the key processes of democracy to function effectively. Those are a fair voting process, informative debate, supportable compromise, and accepted transfer of power.
I think democracy is when everyone's voice is heard and special care is taken to make sure that the unprivileged voices and the marginalized voices and anyone else out there, that all voices are heard. I think anything less than that is undemocratic.
Democracy, a form of government in which a people make the rules that govern their society, agree to be governed, and agree to abide by the decision of a majority. We're not really a true democracy. Our people vote for representatives who in turn vote for us in passing laws that govern. Second, not all those eligible to vote actually vote. Thus, a majority of people is more likely a little over 25%. Finally, we exclude members of our society. About 20% of the US population is under the age of 18. About 14% was not born here. And while some have become citizens, many have not. Thus, about 30% can't vote. The eligible group, that 70%, if only half vote or 35%, representatives can actually be elected by a little more than 18%. Doesn't sound very democratic to me.
Our form of democracy is a representative democracy where power and civic responsibility are exercised by all citizens through their freely elected representatives. Our democracy respects the will of the majority while protecting the fundamental freedom and rights of individuals and minority groups. Among those freedoms and basic human rights are freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to equal protection under law, and the opportunity to organize and participate fully in the political, economic, and cultural life. Our federal, state, and local governments are subject to the rule of law, not to authoritarian dictates. And they are charged with ensuring that all citizens receive equal protection under the law. We not only have rights, we have the responsibility to participate in the political system that in turn protects our rights and freedoms.
Democracy to me is a system where we live together and the majority decides things together to have a way we can support each other and live together. It's a system where everyone has equal rights, equal responsibility, and one where we all share a common goal, or at least the majority shares a common goal. It also, I guess, incorporates liberty within it, incorporates. But the main thing about democracy, we all each have an equal say in how we're going to move forward.
Democracy is a form of government in which citizens are encouraged to participate in having a say as to the laws and policies that a government establishes. And then democracy can be direct, in which each citizen has a direct vote on every law or policy enacted by the government, or indirect, in which each citizen has a vote to elect representatives who best represent the citizens' views on government's laws and policies and who vote directly on enacting those laws and policies. Most democracies are of the latter form. Participation is voluntary, and its degree and quality varies widely among citizens. And in a, in New England towns, that have town meeting form of government, if they're small enough, they do have a direct democracy. If they're larger, they elect neighborhood representatives who represent so many people in an area of the town.
I've been in both a democracy and a monarchy. And when I went to Thailand with a monarchy, with a king there was not as much disagreements as here, because people have their opinion about it. They have disagreements between 2 or 3 people that are getting elected, and that kind of tears people apart. But in a monarchy, they already know who's going to be the next king. They already know who's going to be the next queen. So they can still have their opinions about what's happening with the king and how they like him as a person, but they can't change it as it's already been set in the rule of royal. A democracy can also tear people apart and split up a nation as well.
So I don't think I have an exact and clear answer, but a government for the people, by the people. I guess it would be the fact that the people would make decisions, would vote for others to be representing them in decision making and policy. And it's one where, to me, I would imagine that significant laws that impact society would not be imposed on the constituents in a democracy, unlike possibly a monarchy could.
For me, democracy is is a government that is chosen by the people, and people feel threatened people feel their democracy is threatened because they don't believe that these people are giving them the needs they need met to vote them in. But at some point, everybody's going to choose and have to choose, and it may not be the person that they choose. So then they don't feel like their vote has been heard, and that's when people feel threatened.
The definition of democracy contains the elements of the last line of the Gettysburg Address. The government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The of the people part of it is based on fair rules for voting for candidates of your choice. And the majority winners pursue the policies for the benefits of the people. And the by the people refers to the day-to-day functions of government that are performed by nonpartisan, objective manner by ordinary citizens. These are the people that make all the things work. The most important element is the democracy exists for the people. An inherent characteristic of democracy is it's messy. It tends to be slow, can be confusing, can be frustrating, and autocrats see these as flaws, but it's not a flaw. It's actually a strength. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others.
A democratic form of government is all I have ever known all my life. As to whether it is the best form of government, I don't really know, but I think it is. It gives each of us a voice as to what we want society to be and to do for us. Of course, we say it is an equal voice as it pertains to us, the voter. But the results of the voice is the majority of the voters. It helps us to elect qualified persons to write the laws, those to enforce them, and those to run the machine of government that society lives by. If we as individuals are not happy with the results, then we must work within the system to try to change the vote at the next election.
Democracy is a battlefield of ideas, not personalities. It starts with the idea that all of us stand on common ground and have a responsibility for more than just our own lives, and it recognizes that we are all connected. Democracy requires voters to hold those they elect accountable. This means citizens have a duty to stay informed and exert pressure on officials to serve the interest of many people and not the interest of a few. Democracy means citizens can obtain data and facts and use critical thinking to vote out those who use political theater, emotional appeals, and sensational anecdotes to get elected. This means that democracy requires education and tolerance of ambiguity. It means we do not walk out when we disagree and just leave all the decisions to Father knows best or a pork barrel Santa Claus.
I do not believe that the United States is a true democracy. Let me say that first and foremost. To me, a democracy is more than just a system of governing. It's a way of life where civil liberties and political freedoms are afforded to all the people. It's also a system where everyone, and I stress everyone, has adequate food, clothing, shelter, and medical resources necessary to live. And all of that, to me, is the basis upon which a true democracy can be built. And then after that, we need to determine how in the world do we get a handle on what is the will of the people. And I think we've got some really bad flaws in our system that keeps that from ever being ascertained. That's for another day and another dime. So take care. Thank you.
Let me tell you what democracy means to me. It means upholding and defending the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and upholding and defending the rule of law, as long as the laws are fair and just. It means trial by jury of one's own peers. It means the separation of church and state. It means one citizen, one vote. And I suggest we make a national holiday for national voting. And we, the people, must fight the forces of darkness in our country now, who want to make this country into a Christian nationalist dictatorship.
Is democracy on the line? Is democracy at risk? Well, we're not a democracy to begin with. That's a word that we like to describe ourselves as. When I think of the fundamental unit of life, it's the family, and the family's not a democracy, or it shouldn't be. It's not going to be successful that way. Capitalism is the closest thing to a democracy because you're voting every time you spend a dollar. And what I thought about was what does being in the United States mean for me? What I look at is, well, what is my role? It's a very small role, very small voice, but I do have access. I can call my congressman. I can write to my congressman. I can go to the rallies. All those things. Obviously, I don't have to recite them.
Democracy is an agreement among a specific group of people who live in a defined area, who will abide by the law and rules which are enacted by leaders which a majority of the people have selected.
Politics in our democratic republic is not an orderly business, but increasingly like a madhouse game of oppression, disrespect, and fake accusation. Reasonableness, respect for discussion, debate, and actual problem solving seems rarely seen. Equally destructive, one party is working overtime to attack citizens' private liberties to pursue happiness and personal fulfillment, especially ones so painfully gained over the last half century and more. This is not starry-eyed idealism, but the real politic in our trenches. Is America a kind of dysfunctional household? Is America almost a lost civilization? The care of human life and happiness, and not its destruction, is the first and only legitimate object of good government.